how to actually make sure that the client fully understands the scope. And a very quick framework allow for that to happen. So in a lot of instances, we're asked for new things that are out of scope, and then we think, that's a small thing, we're going to take care of it. And then by the time we look at the end of the project, we went so far out of scope, and then there were so many things that we didn't charge for, which ultimately ends up taking loads of our time, ends up taking loads of our team's time, and makes us less profitable. The mistake that we are making is that the client doesn't remember what the scope was and doesn't understand the distinction between things. So I want to give you guys a framework, one for the weekly management of scope, so that you fully understand exactly how to do that. The thing that I see incredibly often, and I've talked about this in other trainings about proposals and things, but I want to give you guys a piece of insight here that is really, really impactful and important here. So in proposals, one of the things that I see that's missed a load is we have all the things that we are going to do, but the thing that's missed is all the exclusions. Here's all the things that are not included. That way, it's cementing for the client, here's the things that are, and here's the things that aren't, because in a lot of instances, the client doesn't understand the work fully of what exactly is included and not, so that we have a way to be actually able to go back to what that SOW was, that scope of work, and make sure that they really understand what that looks like. For the vast majority of people, right, it's like for us to understand, exactly how every single step of what's going to go on in a medical procedure. Unless you're a doctor, you're not going to understand it. Or if you're in the medical field, right? I'm going to have no idea. No matter how much medical show I watch, I'm never going to be able to understand it in its fullest. And that's essentially what's happening for them, right? Is that there's lots of complicated things that you're doing and processes that you're following, and they don't understand the context. And so we have to help them do that. So let's start with the initial piece, the impactful piece of cementing the scope. So we want to make sure that there's a sales to ops handoff. Typically speaking, what you're going to want to do is a couple of things. You want to have the ops team watch the recordings of the sales calls, so they understand exactly what was promised, what expectation was set, exactly all of those items, so that everyone's on the same page. It's also helpful for the client to actually feel like they're not having to repeat everything about themselves and that they already know them. And then ultimately actually having that documented SOW and the sales budget, the total time, and what success looks like financially for this project. We are then going to go ahead and start an internal launch meeting of what exactly is going to need to be done, who's going to be doing it, what success looks like for them, how many hours they have to do it, and over what timeline, and exactly how that's going to go. Should be able to get that done in about 20 minutes or so, 20, 30 minutes, depending on the size of the project. And then we go ahead and launch the client launch meeting, where we actually have the meeting with the client, let them know exactly what's going to be. We're going to be reaffirming all the things that we talked about in the sales conversation about timeline, the scope, all of that. And we're going to really make sure that we've cemented the scope and plan. Now, on a weekly basis, as well as part of the onboarding agenda, we are going to do a couple of things. We're going to make sure that we are going to reaffirm the project goals. This does a couple of things. It allows for them to understand their initial reason why and our progress to that as well. It's really important for them to remember, and the number one reason I see clients leave agencies is because they forgot the impact that this agency had. And the agency is doing phenomenal work, had loads of success, and they end up leaving anyways. And it's because they actually forgot the impact that you have. The other reason that I see happen very often is that the agency became more of a tactical partner rather than a strategic partner. And if you stay in the strategy end, they have really, in a lot of instances, infinite use for you. Then we want to reaffirm exactly what was in the scope for them for this particular project, what the timeline, and then any discussion items or needs. This is the ongoing structure for your meeting. These items are going to stay the same. You're just updating of where they currently are, making sure that they remember and are constantly reminded of what the timeline looks like, what the scope looks like, what their responsibilities are, and ultimately the progress that you're making, continuing to give them that excitement of future life for them and what that'll look like. As I mentioned, this was a quick sort of summation of what you should be doing on a weekly basis to allow for you to be able to manage your scope with your clients on an ongoing basis. If you have any questions about a specific client in a specific scenario, do me a favor, comment below. That way we can help you out and give you some specific context for that particular